Welcome to Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant podcast. These are the stories of those who have received, given, and who are waiting for the gift of life, organ transplantation. Now here's your host and heart and kidney recipient, BJ Odom.
Welcome to the Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant podcast, where we explore the extraordinary world of organ transplantation. I'm your host, BJ Odom. Each week we share inspiring stories and introduce you to remarkable individuals sharing their own transplant stories. Be sure to support the podcast by leaving a 5-star review and subscribe and follow on your preferred podcast platform. Have a transplant story you'd like to share or have comments about the podcast? We would love to hear from you. Just email us, giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget to connect with us on Facebook, Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast. As we welcome you to episode 81, there are moments in life that test everything we believe in. Our strength, our faith, even our will to keep going. This week, we'll let you meet Jimmy Tolleson, a preacher from Alabama, whose journey proves that miracles can still happen. At just 16, Jimmy started having chest pains. But for years, doctors told him his heart was fine. It wasn't until he turned 51 when the truth came out at Cleveland Clinic, Ohio, as they saved his life with open heart surgery. Later, at St. Thomas West in Nashville, Jimmy received his gift of life that he'd been praying for, a new heart. But even as he fought to live, his wife was losing her battle with cancer. Through faith, love, and the gift of organ donation, Jimmy found purpose in his pain and a reason to keep preaching hope. His story reminds us, no matter how heavy life gets, the heart can still find ways to beat again. Well, Jimmy, it's time to get things started. Why don't you just start out by telling us a little bit about yourself?
BJ, I'm just a normal guy, country boy. I lived in Alabama most of my life, well, half of my life, and then half of my life in Detroit. Started out as a carpenter, done carpenter work most of my life, and had an injury, was building the hospital, fell out and blowed out about 5 discs in my back. I'm a grandfather right now that just kind of runs around watching the grandkids play baseball now. So I'm usually in the baseball field or watching them practice either one. I got 4 grandboys. My wife, she passed away during the time I was battling the heart transplant with cancer, so I'm here by myself and just enjoying watching my grandkids grow up.
Well, that's a rough story to start out with, but now let's get to your transplant story. Where and how did that all begin?
Well, as far as my transplant story started off with a disease called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. My first episode was when I was 16 years old. I was at basketball practice, trying out for junior high, and started having chest pains. And the coach, he just, he thought I was just a little out of shape and wanted me to keep pushing harder. And chest pains just kept getting worse at each practice. And then I was at home and we decided to go hunting a little bit. And I was going out across the field and I passed out. So my parents, they took me to the doctors and they sent me to the hospital and they run a bunch of tests on me and said everything looked good in my heart. They thought it was a stomach issue and diagnosed me with ulcers. Sent me home, and that's one of the things that's kind of followed me all the way through my life. Until I was originally diagnosed, it took about 30-something years for me to get a diagnosis of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. That stomach issue thing was diagnosed several times. I've been in and out of the hospital a bunch of times. I had multiple times where I'd get chest pains, and through from 16 on up, where I'd get chest pains, it would actually drop me to the ground. They'd load me up, send me to the hospital, and everything was always good, according to the doctors at that time in my heart. Had many unnecessary surgeries before I was diagnosed with a heart. Had gallbladder taken out. They said, well, that was what was causing my chest pains. And, it's just been kind of a long process. Me and my wife was working out in a gym one time, and she looked over there and seen my heart rate going crazy, and she hit the stop button on the treadmill and took me on to the hospital, and they ended up running more tests on me. And the doctor there at the hospital is a smaller hospital. He seen something wrong when I done the stress test, and he sent me to one of the largest heart hospitals in Birmingham, Alabama. They run their test and still didn't find nothing. So it's been kind of a long journey for me to figure out what was going on. A lot of tests and a lot of failures.
Now, you say you started at 13, so I'm kind of curious.
16.
So 16, I'm sorry. When were you finally diagnosed that, what your problem was? How long did that diagnosis take for you to get it done correctly?
I was finally diagnosed with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy at the age of 51.
Oh, wow. That was many years in between then, wasn't it?
It was. And like I said, I had, I lost count of how many arteriograms I've had, and every time they'd come back, they was always clear. They'd look at me and think, well, I had some blockage somewhere, and it was up until I was 51 years old, and actually it went back to the stomach issue. I'd been seeing heart doctors for about 2-3 years. Later on in life, I became a minister, and there'd be times I just step out of the car and take 2 or 3 steps, and my chest, I'd have chest pains that go down my left arm, and it'd actually take me all the way down to my knees, and be rushed to the hospital, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. And the doctor finally come in, and he told me, he said, there ain't a thing wrong with your heart. He said, it's got to be a stomach issue. And they sent me to the hospital. It's called, the hospital name was UAB. They had a stomach doctor there. He began running his test. When I first met him, he went through and looked at all my records. He said, Jimmy, when's the last time you had an arteriogram? I looked at him. I said, oh, no, not again. I said, it was just 3 months ago I had an arteriogram. He said, well, look, he said, before I start doing my test, I want you to go ahead and go back to your heart doctor and have them do another arteriogram. He said, it really looks like everything's coming from your heart. And so I went back to my heart doctor, and he said, Jimmy, what are you doing here? I said, well, the doctor you sent me to said I need to have arteriogram for he'll run his test. So to make a long story short, the heart doctor decided that he'd go ahead and run the test again. And again, it come back, everything was good.
Oh, wow.
I went back to the doctor. They was going to see if I had any stomach issues. He run his test, and it was about a week later, I went back to get the results. He said, when I got sat down, he said, now, Jimmy, I said, I'm going to tell you something. There ain't a thing wrong with your stomach. He said, you got a failing heart. I said, I was in disbelief. I'm getting run back and forth to both doctors, and I'm not doing good. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, you got a disease. And he said, I've actually wrote a book about it. You got a disease that's called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And he said, it masquerades as many different diseases. And that's what you've got. And you need to go back to your heart doctor. And they need to run another heart cath, but they need to go all the way into the left chamber of your heart. And like I said, I was just so confused at that time. I didn't know which way to go, but I called my heart doctor up as soon as I left his office. And I told him, I said, well, the guy that you sent me to, the doctor you sent me to is told me I've got heart problems. I don't have stomach problems. And by chance, they had a opening for me to come right then to the doctor again. I walked in there and got sit down and waited on the heart doctor to come in. He said, Jimmy, what is he actually saying is going on? I said, well, he said he was going to send you all the records and what he's seen. And he went and checked, and they hadn't got there yet. And he said, well, what did he actually say was causing her? Did he have a name for it? And I said, at that time, I couldn't remember that name.
You know what?
I ain't never heard.
I can see where you do that, because I have had so many doctors tell me so many things. And when I walk out, it's like, can you tell me that in layman's terms? Because, it's hard to be able to talk the doctor's life. And like a lot of times I prefer when they tell you I said, dumb it down. Tell me in simple terms what is going on.
And that's exactly what the stomach doctor done. I couldn't remember the name of, at that time, because I ain't never heard of that disease. He said, what happens with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy? And a lot of times I'd have the chest pains after a meal, especially a meal that might have high carbs in it. And he says, what happens with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, your left chamber is smaller. And when I would eat a high carb food, the blood would leave my heart to go down and help digest my food. They wouldn't be enough to do everything else that needs to be done in the body to, there wouldn't be enough blood to take care of all the other organs in the body that needs to be done. Thus, you'd get your chest pains, and it would mimic, like I was having a heart attack. So that's what I told the heart doctor. I said, he said, every time I eat food, blood leaves in my heart. And then that's what causes the chest pains. And the heart doctor scratched his head a little bit. And he said, well, we got to do another arteriogram. And I'm sitting there, I've already had 20-something of these or more probably. And, but anyways, he went in and he done the arteriogram, and he went on down deeper into the left chamber of my heart. So when we come back to I got back to the waiting room, the doctor come in and explained to me. He said, well, you got hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. We think it's aptical. And that's on the bottom part of the muscle tissue inside that left chamber was growing and basically, stopping up reducing the size of the left chamber of the heart. And he was using medical terms. My wife, she was a physical therapist, and she understood it a lot better than I did. And he said, but there's no surgery or nothing we can do for you. All we can do basically is give you medicines to try to keep you eased off.
Now, what year was
some other?
Now, what year was this? What year was this then, when they finally gave you the correct diagnosis?
That was 2013.
Then when did you hear the words heart transplant, or how did the story continue? Maybe that's a better question to ask.
Yeah, it was a little bit further. I had a total of 1 month to wrap my mind around the term hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy. I didn't really understand exactly what the doctor was saying to me, but basically what he first told me was there was nothing they could do to go home and get my affairs in order.
Oh, wow.
That's how serious it was. It was, I didn't understand it. When I looked over at my wife, she had tears coming down her eyes.
So,
I went home. You know what I had to do. I just had 30 days to wrap my head around this disease. And I went home and started praying about it. That's where faith came in. I started praying about it. Started researching this disease, and I found out association. It was called the Hypertrophic Cardiomyopathy Association. And I decided to give them a call, and I spoke to the lady there. Her name's Lisa Salzberg, and she's the founder of the association. And she was talking to me and asking me questions. She said, "Do you mind sending me your records?" Well, I said, "Well, I don't mind sending you my records because they basically told me I ain't gonna live too long here." And I sent her my records, and within probably 30 minutes after I sent my records up, she calls me back, and she said, "Jimmy," he said, "there's no place in Alabama that can handle your condition." She said, "There's a small center in Emory University in Georgia." She said, "But you really need to go to Cleveland Clinic in Ohio." And that's where my journey to heart transplant started at.
Okay, so you go to Cleveland Clinic there in Ohio, and what's the process? And are you told immediately, or they got some plans to maybe keep you around a little longer? Because I know in most transplant cases, they try to keep you going as long as possible, and until you really, really need it. Or did you really, really need it right from the beginning?
No, I didn't need it really from the beginning. My first step was, I went up to Cleveland Clinic and I seen a doctor there, and he was one of the top in the world, probably with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And I was expecting to go up to Cleveland Clinic, and they give me some medicine and send me back home. They scheduled all the tests that it'd take me forever to get done here in Alabama. They was done in one day, and I got diagnosis that evening. Mm-hmm. It was so amazing, that place was. But I got up there, and we run all the tests. I can't remember, it's a full day of tests, just back-to-back tests. And we got to meet the doctor, and he sat down with him, and he looked at me and said, "Jimmy," said, "all the medicines in the world ain't going to help you." He said, "Matter of fact, I've already talked with the surgeon here, and we're prepared to do surgery on you first thing in the morning."
Oh, wow. There's a shocker. You just go tomorrow morning. That's pretty quick there. Now, that wasn't the transplant, though, was it? That wasn't the transplant. That was some other surgery, right?
That was kind of the lead up to the transplant. I was in shock when he told me that, and I told him, I said, "No, I didn't come up here prepared for surgery. We had a large farm, and like I said, I was a minister." I said, "I need a little time to get things in order at home and get people take care of everything at home while I do this." And he said, "Well, let me get this one test back, and once I get it back, I can tell you if I can give you a little time." And the process went on, and that evening, late that evening, he told me to come back at 5:00. He should have the test back. And we went to the office, and was waiting on him to come in, and all of a sudden everybody started going home. Me and my wife still in the office. I'm thinking, well, they forgot about us. And it went about 45 minutes later, the doctor come in and he said the test didn't come back as early as I thought it would be. And I went down and read it myself. he said, I can give you 2 weeks. Then you got to be back and you got to have this surgery. And it's called a septal myectomy. And they was going to go in and basically cut out some of that muscle tissue that was causing the blockage and causing the high pressures in my heart, and try to relieve some of that. So they went in and took out 13 grams of muscle out of the inside of my left chamber of my heart. And I had that surgery done on January 14th.
Of what year now?
Of 2000, and that was in 2014.
Okay.
So it was about 3 weeks by the time we got back and got everything lined back up. And it was, like I said, it was one of them things that you just didn't expect. I mean, I was expecting I'd get medicine and go home and come back and have to have that surgery. But the surgeon had done the surgery. It was, I prepared myself either way. I kind of joked through it a lot. The surgeon was he said, "You're taking this too easy. Do you understand what we got to do?" I said, "Yes, I understand." I said, "I'm just putting my faith and trust in you." And I told him there was kind of a little bit of a funny story. I always look up the doctors that I see and get the background on them. And I told him, I said, and he's done surgeries for people for all over the world for the septal myectomy. And I said, "There's a girl you operated on in California." She said, "You saved her life, but she was a little unhappy with the surgery." And also the surgeon, he stepped back and he said, "All right, go ahead and tell me what she just didn't like about me." I said, "Well, now, like you said, you saved her life, but she's got a crooked scar." And he got to laughing about that. And he said, "There's a story behind that one." It said, "When we go back in OR, and the people that put the tape on you, it takes 2 people to put tape across your chest. And if one pulls a little bit tighter than another," he said, "I can cut a straight line, but when we take the tape off, it's crooked because they didn't pull the exact pressure." So we laughed about that. We had a pretty good joke about that. And so when they got me ready to take me back in surgery, and they had me on the table and getting everything fixed up, I said, "All right." I said, "Who's going to put the tape on me?" And the two guys in there, they said, "We'll be the ones who put the tape across your chest." I said, "Well, the doctor's already told on you." And I said, "I want you to make sure y'all pull evenly. I want my scar good and straight on my chest." So they all got to laughing about it in the surgery room. I said, there's a story behind that. I said, "I'm a carpenter's son, and my Lord and Savior is a carpenter's son. I like everything nice and straight. I want that scar good and straight." I didn't know the surgeon was standing behind me, and they said, "Go ahead and knock this joker out so we can get this thing done."
So,
but anyway,
how was it? I just got to ask, because, I've had bypass surgery before I had my transplant. How was the recoup time from that surgery?
It was amazing. From the time I woke up, I was walking. They come in and, after they got me out of ICU, I had a little problems with surgery. They went in and they cut out so many grams of muscle, and they took me off the bypass machine and got my heart started back up and went crazy, and they had to stop, and they had to go in and put me back on bypass and go back and take a little more muscle out. And so surgery took a little bit longer, and I was in ICU about a day longer. But soon as I got out of ICU into a regular room, I didn't get to sit down good. And therapy come in, and they said, "Mr. Tolleson, we need to get you up, get you to walking." I said, "All right." And they said, "We want you to walk to the door and back." And so they had had me by both arms so I wouldn't fall. And I got to the door and I said, if you'll open that door, I'll walk down the hallway some. And from that point on, I mean, I recuperated very fast. I went from surgery, on the 7th day, I walked 2 miles.
And how old were you then?
I was 50, still 51. Yeah, I was still 51.
Okay.
So the surgery itself was, I didn't even have no pain with it. I didn't take no, they come in that, they had a pump at that time where you press a button when you needed pain medication. And the nurse come in and said, Mr. Tolleson, you're not using your button any for pain, are you? And I said, no, I don't need it. Which there's another thing that happened during that time too. Through the Hypertrophic Cardiomyopathy Association, I was able to meet people all around the country that was going through what I was doing. And so happened at that time, there's a guy that I met through the association was having his septal myectomy the same time I was at Cleveland Clinic. So we was basically roommates. So we was able to talk through, when we had a little pain, we was able to talk to one another and kind of work it out where we didn't need no pain medication.
Okay, so this is when you're 51. Now, how much longer was it before they came to you again and said you're going to need a transplant? And was that again at the Cleveland Clinic there in Ohio?
Well, this was where the tragedy came in. My wife was, when they first called and told me that I was going on transplant route, and it was through Cleveland Clinic. My wife was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And I just couldn't go from Alabama to Cleveland Clinic for a heart transplant. So I talked with Cleveland Clinic and I told them the situation, and I wasn't ready for the transplant at that moment because I had 6 good years with the septal myectomy before we ended up with we started talking transplant. I told them, I said, I just can't be away from my wife at that length of time. So we ended up coming to Nashville, Tennessee to have the transplant done.
Okay, so you actually got the transplant then, what, at Vanderbilt? Is that where that was then?
I went to Vanderbilt first. I was still dealing with some issues with the hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And they at that time was just now becoming a COE for that. And that stands for Center of Excellence for Hypertrophic Cardiomyopathy. So I ended up having the transplant done in Nashville at St. Thomas West.
Okay.
They was a little bit further ahead on the hypertrophic cardiomyopathy side than Vanderbilt was. And so we was kind of battling with two things. And actually, I had some issues with the transplant stuff because of my wife's sickness. I actually had to put the brakes on my transplant because my wife was getting worse, and they was wanting me to have an ICD put in, like we talked earlier. They want to try to put the transplant off as far as they can, so I would just have to have one heart transplant. Not, I think the average limit on a heart transplant somewhere 11 to 12 years, something like that. So they're trying to do the best to push it off as far as they can. I refused the ICD for a while because I wouldn't be able to pick my wife up and help her. We went to the Life Fest. I don't know if you ever heard of a Life Fest.
No.
At the last part, just before my wife passed, I had the Life Fest. And
okay. I thought you said Life Fest, as in festival. Okay, now I know what you're talking about. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a life vest. It was basically an outside ICD. And just before my wife passed, I come agreements with doctor. I said, I can't do the ICD because I wouldn't be able to lift and pick her up and move her as she needed and be there for her. So we done the life vest, and I had that until after my wife passed. And so that was, and then the next thing I had with the heart transplant, I just had problems with the idea somebody had to die for me to live. That really bothered me a lot. You know, I kept pushing off the heart transplant doctor. At that time I was seeing them about every 2 weeks, seeing where my levels were and see kind of where I was and how my heart was doing. And my doctor I was seeing for transplant, she come in and she had all my files, you know. She come in and she just dropped them on the desk. She said, "Look, Mr. Tolleson, if we don't get you on the list, we're not going to be able to get you a heart transplant. You just go really fast." And I don't know if you've ever heard or anybody's ever told you this with hypertrophic, when you got hypertrophic cardiomyopathy and it goes on to the transplant stage, can go from doing fairly well to just dropping off the cliff in a hurry. It can happen really fast. And I'd been pushing it off. Like I said, I just really, at that time, I didn't want somebody to have to die for me to live. Matter of fact, I had my churches praying, and they had asked what they could do for me, or they'd also be saying, "We're praying for you." And I told them one time, I said, "I'd rather you pray that the donor lives, and because I'm ready to leave." That's the way I took it for a long time. I said I didn't want nobody to die for me to have to live.
Now, what finally, if I could ask, because this is something that I've heard from other transplant patients too. What was it that finally, what helped you through it, and what finally made you say, all right, this is okay, let's do it?
Well, and I don't know how you believe in things, but through a lot of prayer, God told me I still had work to do.
Okay.
And when I was in there with a surgeon, and my heart transplant doctor, and she come in with all those files, and she dropped them on the desk and told me what she told me. And I just looked up at her and I said, "Okay, you can put me on the list." And she it stunned her. She said, "I got to know, why in the world you've been putting it off so long? And, then you just very easily, you tell me, okay, it's time for me to be listed." I said, what caused it? And I said, well, it was through prayer, and God told me I had still work to do. So that's when I was listed, and that was probably, I was 61, I think, when I was first, they started to talk to me about being put on the list. And I was 62 actually when I was put on the list.
Okay, so you're put on the list at 62. When did you get your transplant then? How long did that take?
I got my 3.5 months after I was put on the list.
So you were still 62 then?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually, I got my heart transplant on August 15th, 2024.
All right. Well, congratulations.
But it was, I'd waited so long that they wanted me to, like I said, I still having issues with somebody having to die for me to live. They wanted me to have accept a Hep C heart, hepatitis C heart. They went through all that. They told me they could cure all that and get that all cleared up. And when the doctors was talking to me about that, I think it was about a month and a half I've been on the list. I was really getting in bad shape. And they said, if we put you on the list, that you'd accept a Hep C heart, we might can get your heart a little bit faster. And they was going through all that. And then the doctor brought up, he said, there's a possibility that you might get a teenage heart. And that was definitely a no for me. Again, I said, I couldn't handle that. Thinking about somebody that's just starting their life and they're passing away, I just couldn't handle that. So I didn't accept the Hep C heart. And went on about another month. And I told him, I said, well, if it's last case scenario, that I would accept a Hep C heart. But it was a good thing. I didn't have to have a Hep C heart. I got the heart I received. All the information I got was, the guy was about 30 years old, and that was about it. And I've actually sent a letter, tried to get some communication with the donor family. But that's it's just been a long process for me to get there. And but it was just after I had the transplant, it was just like it was when I had septumectomy. I got better so fast.
Well, that's good. And you're still doing good today then, right?
I'm doing good. The heart is doing great, but the medications are really tough.
Yeah, they're actually in the process of changing mine over. So hopefully that's going to change over and be for the better. But of course, you never know till you've got all the new levels and everything else set just right. And then you can kind of start over. But that's something new for me too. They're changing my meds because I just seem to be getting a lot of skin cancers again lately. And then, of course, 2015, had to get a kidney transplant also because of all those wonderful meds that we take to keep us alive.
Oh, yeah. It's like I said, I'm a little over a year out right now, and I've already had to change anti-rejection meds 4 times already. So that's been a battle, and that was one of the things that I wasn't really worried about the surgery and getting over it. I was worried about the medicines. I'm one of them type of people that never had to, up until I had heart problems, I never had to take any medicines, and I kind of take after my mother. A lot of medicines that I have allergic reactions to, and that's even today. I'm kind of having my day. The last 3 or 4 weeks has been really rough, and not feeling too great today. And looks like we may have to be going to have to change medicines again. We're trying to battle that off as long as possible, but things ain't going good as far as the medicine side, and it does take a certain combination for everybody to get to find that right combination that settles down, and it's going to take a while for me also.
Yeah, and it's like no 2 transplant patients are the same with their body makeup and everything else. So yeah, it takes a lot of balancing, and it's quite the balancing act. Well, Jimmy, I appreciate you for sharing your story. Anything that we may have missed or anything else you want to make sure that you get out there for people to hear as we share your story here on The Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast?
From all the things that's happened to me and from the long period of time it took me from diagnosis to the first heart surgery to second surgery, I've learned it was the most important thing is you need to be able to self-advocate for yourself.
Oh, yes. Very important.
That is the most important thing, because especially with the type of disease I got, it masquerades as so many different diseases. I'd been wrote off. I've even had doctors said it was all in my mind. I mean, good doctors. I'm not saying bad nothing about any of the doctors that I ever seen. I had some of the best that are out there, but only you know your own body, and you know what you're going through, and you got to be that person that's got to step up sometimes and say, hey, what we're doing is just not working or is not the right fit, and we need to look at something else or try something else, and just advocate for yourself, because a lot of times doctors, I guess there's been times in my life I'd just like to be able to grab a doctor's hands and let them know how I was feeling, for them to completely understand. I hope people can understand that, but that's one thing I've learned. And like I said, we're still battling our medicines, but been blessed with a good heart, and maybe hopefully one of these days I'll be able to meet the donors.
Now, are you still preaching too? You're 60, 62, 63 now? Are you still behind the pulpit?
I still preach every time the doors are open. I'm not pastoring a church, but I'm still preaching, and somebody needs any help. And that's kind of the work that God's laid out for me. He told me I had work to do, and through my heart disease, I've been able to speak to people from all over the world, nearly on a daily basis, that's going through things like I went through, or going into things like that, and I've been able to help them. And like I said, anytime the doors are open, I still preach. I actually made a ministry on the ball fields with like I told you earlier, people want to pray. We'll stop right in the middle of the ballpark. I will have prayer right in the middle of the ballpark. And just try to help people and try to be a good human being is what I'm trying to do right now.
Well, I know that there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast, not only that have had transplants, but those that are waiting for transplants. And before we let you go, what would you have to say to any of those folks out there that are waiting and hoping for that day that they'll receive that life-saving transplant?
Just keep the faith. It's out there, and you can have life. A lot of people, when they have the transplants, they think life stops. It's only I restarted my life. I've been able to keep enjoying my life. Now you're gonna have to take a lot of medicines and things like that, but it's not the end of life. You can, once you get that transplant, you'll be doing a whole lot better, and you can begin to enjoy life and just keep the faith and keep moving on. I take each step every day. Everybody asks me, says, how do you feel today? I said, well, I'm not feeling the greatest today, but I'm just going to keep walking forward, keep it going forward.
Thank you so much, Jimmy, for sharing your story with us today on The Gift of Life. And be sure to join us each week for a new heartfelt episode. And if you have a transplant story, please email us, giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook. Also, don't forget to like and share this episode with family and friends. And we would appreciate that 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Reminder, my memoir, More Parts Than a Chicken Nugget, isn't just a medical story. It's a survival story filled with humor, hope, and heart. It'll make you laugh, maybe even cry. Definitely believe in second chances. Get it now on Amazon. Another podcast you might enjoy is myself and my former radio partner, Bill Stevens. BJ and Bill, the podcast, all on the Podcast Playground Network. We want to thank them for making this podcast possible. Until next time, I'm BJ Odom. Thank you for being a part of our journey and reminding us all to appreciate each and every day and to treasure the extraordinary gift of life.
He was running on empty, heart fading fast. Doctor said, man, you ain't gonna last. But a stranger's kindness, a gift so true, turned the night sky into something new. He got a second chance, he got a brand new spark. like a freight train rolling back from the dark. Gift of life, let the story be told. One heart beats, another takes hold. Give a little, save a soul. Ain't no greater rock and roll. 15 years later, the road got rough. The fight ain't over when the climb is tough. Needed a kidney, the race was on. Another hero stepped up, kept him strong. Every breath he takes is a tale of hope. One life saved, another can cope. Gift of life, let the story be told. One heart beats, another takes hold. Give a little, save a soul. Ain't no greater rock and roll. Doctor's hands, a donor's grace, running on down to a brand new place. Second chances don't come twice, but when they do, man, they feel so nice. Let's spread the word, let the people know. One yesterday lets a miracle grow. You don't need wings just to save a man. Just a little love, a helping hand. Gift of life, let the story be told. One heart beats, another takes hold. Give a little, save a soul. Ain't no greater rock and roll. BJ still rocking, still standing tall. Thanks to the ones who gave it all. Gift of life, hear the sound. Pass it on, pass it down. The Gift of Life podcast, hosted by BJ Odom. Listen now. Listen now.